got a little time before Yumiko and I go out, I'm going to read a poem that I uncovered. I was reading this book, California. It's a collection of poems and stories related from authors in California in the mid-19th century. And it led me down a rabbit hole to this poem called The Hermitage by a California author and poet, Edward Rowland Sill. Here's the bit that I found in the book that led me to this. It says, one such poem, The Hermitage, celebrates a retreat looking down on San Francisco and the sea, whence a poet surveys life and its meanings. Let's give it a read. So I tracked it down. But it's on an old text that's been like photocopied, so I have to kind of read it. My one eye is going bad, so if I could get it out. The Hermitage. A life, a common, cleanly, quiet life, full of good citizenship and repute, new, but with promise of prosperity, a well-bred, fair, gentlemanly life. What business had a girl to bring her eyes and her blonde hair and her clear, ringing voice and break up life as a bell breaks a dream? Had love Christ's wrath, and did this life sell doves in the world's temple, that love scourged it forth beyond the gates? Within. Hold on, that last bit was tough. So he's talking about a life of a young gentleman, and what business has this blonde-haired, clear-ringing voiced girl come to break up the dream? Here's the next part. Had love Christ's wrath, and did this life sell doves in the world's temple? Probably some reference to Jesus in the marketplace, maybe. That love scourged it forth beyond the gates. Had love Christ, had love, capital L, had love Christ's wrath. You know, Christ coming into the temple to turn over the money changers' tables, right? Had love Christ's wrath, and did this life sell doves in the world's temple, that love scourged it forth beyond the gates, pushing it beyond. Within, the worshippers, without the waste and the hill country, where the life, with smarted shoulders and stung heart, unknowing that the hand which scourged could heal, drave forth, blind, cursing in despair, to die, or work its own salvation out in fear. Since the time angel left my soul with thee, thou hast been a hard stepmother unto me. Now I at last rebel against thy stony eyes and cruel hands. I will go seek in far off lands some quiet corner where my years shall be still as the shadow of a brooding bird that stirs but with her heartbeats far unheard, may wrangle on the noisy autumn, a noisy human host, while I will face my life, that silent ghost, and force it speak what it would have with me. I think I get it. So a young man whose love has been scorned by a young woman, off to find solace. Now this is written in a time when California was that place. That's what this book's premise is all about. The literature of California that arose in the mid-19th century as a result of the gold rush, basically. So this young man is off to California. Not of the fair young earth, the snow-crowned, sunny-belted globe, not of its skies, nor twilight's purple robe, nor peely dawn, not of the flower's birth, and autumn's forced funerals, not of storms and quiet seas and clouds' incessant forms, not of the sanctuary of the night, with its solemnities, nor any sight and pleasant sound of all the friendly day. But I am tired of what we call our lives. So I'm not tired of all of this, but I'm tired of what we call our lives. How many of us couldn't relate to that? Tired of the endless humming in the hives, sick of the bitter honey that we eat, and sick of cursing all the shallow cheat. Let me arise and away to the land that guards the dying day, whose burning California, whose burning tear, the evening star, drops silently to the wave afar. Yeah, I've seen that myself. Venus dropping into the waves at evening. It's perfect. The land where summers never cease, their sunny psalm of light and peace, whose moonlight, poured for years untold, has drilled down in dust of gold, whose morning splendors, fallen in showers, leave ceaseless sunrise in the flowers. There I will choose some eyrie in the hills. It's like an eyrie, like an eagle's nest up in the hills. He's going to find a place up in the hills where I may build like a lonely bird and catch the whispered music heard out of the noise of human ills. And then there's a pause. And he's there. So I am here at last. Look at the way it's structured. See the pause and then the structure. Here at last. A pure world whose feet the old salt past washes against and leaves it fresh and free as a new island risen from the sea. Now remember, he's in San Francisco in the early or mid-19th century, up on a hill. The Golden Gate is, of course, not there, but the sea is coming through. He's talking about cleaning, the ocean cleaning it through. I know that salty air. Yeah, that cold, salty air. 3 dreamy weeks we lay on ocean's breast, on the ship coming to California. He must have gone down around the tip of South America. Rocked asleep by gentle winds caressed, or crooned with wild wave lullabies to rest. A memory of foam and glassy spray, wave chasing wave like young sea beasts at play, sketches of misty silver neath the moon, and night airs murmuring many a quiet tune. 3 long, delicious weeks, monotony of stars and of sky and stars and sea, broken midway by one day's tropic scene of giant plants, tangles of luminous green, with fiery flowers and purple fruits between. I think I know what he's talking about. If you've read Dana's 2 years before the mast, he made the same voyage from the East Coast, from Boston down and around, and he's talking about the 3 weeks on the ship and then the stopping in the Galapagos or around the Galapagos Islands to reprovision, and that's what he's referring to here. It helps to have read that earlier story. I have found a spot for my hermitage, no dank and sunless cave. I come not for a dungeon nor a cage, not to be nature's slave, but as a weary child unto the mother's faithful arms I flee, and seek the sunniest footstool at her knee, where I may sit beneath careless caresses mild, and hear the sweet old songs that she will sing to me. Remember, this is a young man fleeing the East, going to the West, to California, not yet a state, to the land of the Spaniards, the sleepy Spaniards as they were described then, to create his life, and he found himself a place above San Francisco overlooking the bay to escape his broken heart. 'Tis a grassy mountain nook in a gorge whose foaming brook tumbles through from heights above, merrily leaping to the light. From the pine woods' haunted gloom, as a romping child, affrighted from a somber room, leaps to the sunshine, laughing with delight. Be this my home, by man's tread undefiled. Here sounds no voice but of the morning dove, nor harsher footsteps on the sands appear than the sharp, slender hoof marks of the deer, or where the quail has left a zigzag row of lightly printed stars, her tracks to show. I remember seeing those quail tracks in the desert when I was living there recently. Above me frowns a front of rocky wall, still there today, I bet, deep cloven into ruinous pillars tall, and sculptures strange, bald to its dizzy heights. Isn't this interesting? I've noticed this in a lot of the 19th century literature. They'll take the semicolon, I don't know if it's coming through, and they'll put a space before and after the semicolon right there. Never been able to figure out why they do that. I should ask ChatGPT. Bald to its dizzy edge, save where in some deep crevice of a ledge buttressed by its black shadow hung below, a solitary pine has cleft the rock, straight as an arrow, feathered to the tip, as if a shaft from the moon huntress's bow had struck and grazed the cliff's defiant lip, and stood still stiffly squivering with the shock. So there's one pine arching over the top of the cliff. Beyond the gorge, a slope runs half up with hollow curve as for a giant's cup, brimming with blue pine shadows. Then in air, the gray rock rises bare, its front deep fluted by the sculptor storms, in molded columns, rounded forms, as if great organ pipes were chiseled there, whose anthem, he's talking about the formation of the cooled magma of a volcanic chamber, really above San Francisco, whose anthems, as if great organ pipes were chiseled there, whose anthems are the torrent's roar below, and chanting winds that through the pine tops go. Here burst the requiem music sink and rise. Here bursts the requiem music sink and rise, when the full moonlight slowly streaming lies, like panes of gold on some cathedral pave, while floating mists their silver incense wave, and the mists from the water, right, like incense. And from the on high, through fleecy window bars, gaze down the saintly faces of the stars. He's creating a cathedral out of this rock edifice and the cascading torrent going over the edge, and the pine, of course. Against the huge trunk of a storm-snapped tree, whose hollow, ready hewn by a long decay, above a chimney lined with slate and clay, below a broad arched fireplace, makes for me, I've built of saplings and long limbs, a hut. The roof, with lacing boughs, is tightly shut, thatched with thick spreading palms of pine, and tangled over by a wandering vine, uprooted from the woods close by, whose clasping tendrils cling and twine, waving their hands on high, as if they loved to deck this nest of mine, within by smooth white stones from the brook's beach. My rooms are separated each from each on yonder island rock by my table spread, my table spread, brook ringed that no stray fasting ant may come to make himself with my wild fare at home. So he's got a table for his meal within the brook, with the water going on either side to keep the ants out. Here will I live, and here my life shall be serene, still, rooted steadfastly, yet pointing skyward, and its motions keep a rhythmic balance as that cedar tall, whose straight shaft rises from the chasm there, through the blue hollow air, and, measuring the dizzy deep, leans its long shadow on the rock's gray wall. Through the sharp gap of the gorge below, from my mountain's feet the gaze may go, over a stretch of fields, broad-sunned, thence glance beyond, across the beautiful bay, to that dim ridge, a score of miles away, lifting its clear-cut outline high, azure with distance on the azure sky, whose flocks of white clouds, brooding on its crests, have winged from ocean to their piney nests. Beyond the bright blue water's further rim, where waves seem ripples on its far-off brim, the rich young city lies, diminished to an anthill size. I trace its steep streets, ribbing all the hill. He's talking about San Francisco, I believe. Like early San Francisco, like narrow bands of steel, binding the city on the shifting sand. That's right, San Francisco is built on sand dunes. That's why it has all the up and down streets. Thick pressed between them stand broad piles of buildings, prickled through here and there by a sharp steeple, and above the air, murky with smoke and dust that seem to show the bright sky saddened by the sin below, right? The bars, the brothels, all the things of the Wild West. The voice of my wild brook is marvelous. Imagine the young man sitting up there above the city. You can see it down below, the clean air all around, the cascade, the waterfall, the place to eat, the cabin that he's created with its 2 separate rooms, and looking down below at San Francisco. I wonder where this is. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the San Francisco area. Some heights above it, maybe. The voice of my wild brook is marvelous, leaning above it from a jutting rock to watch the image of my face that forms and breaks and forms again as the image of God is broken and regathered in a soul. He was a man that struggled with his faith. In the end, he settled on Catholicism, but he did struggle. I listen to the chords that sink and swell from many a little fall and babbling run. That hollow gurgle is the deepest bass. Over the pebbles gush contralto tones. I don't know what that word means. Contralto must be some musicology thing. While shriller trebles tinkle merrily, running like some enchanted fingered flute, endless chromatics. Now it is the hum and roar of distant streets, the rush of winds. He's talking about the city now, right? The rush of winds through far-off forests. Now the noise of rain. A noise, I guess he's talking about the sounds, the cacophony everywhere around, right? The city, the winds, everything. Let's try that again. Now it is the hum and roar of distant city streets, the rush of winds through far-off forests. Now the noise of rain, drumming on the roof, the hiss of ocean foam. Now the swift ripple of piano keys, its mad muserkas danced by laughing girls. So night and day the hurrying brook goes on, sometimes in noisy glee. I'm going to remember that sentence for the rest of my life. Sometimes far down, silent along the bottom of the gorge, like a deep passion hidden in the soul that chafes its secret hunger for the sea. Yet not so still that heaven finds its course, and not so hid that the yearning night broods over it and feeds it with her stars. When the earth has Eden spots like this for man, why will he drag his life where lashing storms whip him indoors, the petulant weather's slave, where he is but a helpless naked snail, except he wears his house close at his back. Here the wide air builds him his palace walls. He's talking about the difference between the man that's resigned himself to the workaday world and the life that requires, staying close to home, keen and near for the security that provides, versus the life he has chosen, encompassed by nature itself. Here, the wide air builds him his palace walls, some little corner of it roofed for sleep, or he can lie all night bare to the sky, just find a little place to hide from the elements, or he can lie all night bare to the sky and feel updrawn against the breast of heaven, letting his thoughts stretch out among the stars, as the antenna of an insect grope blindly for food, or as the ivy shoots clamber from cope and tower to find the light and drink the electric pulses of the sun. Well put for the mid-19th century. Electric pulses of the sun. As from that sun we draw the coarser fire that swells the veins and builds the brain and bone, so from each star a finer influence streams, kindling within the mortal chrysalis the first faint thrills of its new life to come. Here is no niggard gap, that's not a bad word, of sky above, with murk and mist below, but all sides clear, not an inch baited from the full swung dome, each constellation to the horizon's rim, keen glittering as if one only need walk to the edge there, spread his wings and float. The dark earth's burn below into the blue, behind into the blue. I love thee, thou brown, homely, dear old earth. Those fair planets, whether fate may lead, whatever marvel be their bulk or speed, ringed with what splendor, belted round with fire and glory of perpetual moons arrayed. He's talking about the early impressions of what the stars were. They had pretty simple telescopes then. They could see the rings of Saturn, the planets, or the moons around Jupiter, etc. That's what he's describing here. Can ne'er give, but in glory of perpetual moons arrayed, can ne'er give back the glow and fresh desire of youth in that old home where man had birth, whose path he trode through wholesome light and shade. Out of their silver radiance to thy dim and clouded orb his eye will turn, as an old man looks back to where he played about his father's hearth, and finds for him no splendor like the fires which there did burn. See, I come to live alone for thee. He's coming to live alone for the love of the earth. See, I come to live with a man whose heart has been, young man whose heart has been spurned. See, I am come to live alone with thee. Thou hast had many a one, grown old and worn, come to thee weary and forlorn, bent with weight, the weight of human vanity, but I come with my life almost untried. In thy perpetual, he's talking about all the old men that would go to nature for respite and to seeking wisdom and security, but he's young. He hasn't been beaten down yet, but he's innocent and in a way weak. But I come with my life almost untried. In thy perpetual presence to abide. Teach me thy wisdom. Let me learn the flowers and know the rocks and trees and touch the springs of all thy hidden powers. Let me still gloom of thy rock fastness fall deep upon my spirit till the voice of brooks becomes familiar and my heart rejoice with joy of birds and winds and all the hours unmaddened by the babble of vain men. Bring thy most inner converse to my ken, so shall it be that when I stand on that next planet's ruddy shimmering strand, I shall not seem a pert and forward child, seeking to dabble in obtruser's lore, with alphabet unlearned, who in disgrace returns upon his primer yet to pour. But those examiners, all wise and mild, shall gently lead me to my place, as one faithfully did trace these simpler earthly records over and over. Well, I've got to stop there. There's a lot more to it. It's time to take the dogs for a walk. This poem, again, is a very long poem. It's called The Hermitage by, if you want to look it up, just pop it on the, I just asked ChatGPT to give me a link, and it did, by Edward Rowland Sill, a young man who came to California in 1861, educated at Yale, became a poet and an author, a very interesting man in his own right, struggled with his thoughts about religion, about the meaning of his life. Oh, and he was gay, I think. All right, I hope you enjoyed this poetry. Take care. I'm only saying the gay thing because he struggled with that too, right? And he was a friend of Mark Twain.